Chapter 1. A Round Black Eye. A thump and kerplash awoke Tomas Torres. He blinked his eyes and listened. Thump, kerplash. It was 5 a.m. His pelican alarm clock was going off. The brown pelicans were up. They were diving into the sea in the blue darkness, plunging head first to scoop up fish in their enormous beaks with nets of skin. On the fourth kerplash, Tomas rolled to his feet. Yawning, he stepped naked from the palapa, an architectural wonder of palo blanco tree posts, gracefully roofed and walled with palm leaves. He heard the deep, soft breathing of his grandfather and uncle, still asleep on the sandy floor of their airy palapa house. Tomas strode out of the palm porch and looked from the island of Coronados, where he stood, across the Sea of Cortez to the peninsula of Baja California, Mexico, a mountain range in the sea that is the toe of the Rockies. The mountains stretched north and south from horizon to horizon, and in the low light they looked like a gargantuan cutout of a jaw of shark's teeth. Above them stars shone as bright as fire. The sun would not be up for an hour. Tomas ran down the white coral beach to the water. "Good morning," he called to the penguins, wading up to his waist. He took a breath and dived into water as clear as air. With the grace of a sea lion, Tomas sped through a crowd of awakening fish that were beginning to school up for the day. Near the bottom, he rolled onto his back and looked up. Above him darted a flock of little diving birds. They swam in spurts and dashed as they chased fish. Tomas shot to the surface. "Excuse me," he said to the tidy-eared grebes as he exploded into their midst. Unabashed, the small loon-like birds swam closer to him. "Go home to your pools in the United States," he said. "This is my cove." Tomas laughed from his belly to his eyes, a laugh so joyful it often turned people's heads to see who could be so happy. He lunged to catch a grebe. When it dived, he began counting. The bird did not pop up to breathe for 2 whole minutes. "I wish I could stay down as long as you can," he said, as the grebe paddled toward him, head under water looking for fish. When it dived again, Tomas swam with it into the night-filled depths of the cove waters. 1, 2, 3, he began. At 55, he burst to the surface. The bird was still underwater. "If I could hold my breath as long as you," he went on, "I could catch the whale shark my uncle saw, the one that tore my grandfather's net. The net lay on the beach not far from the palapa, like a cobweb torn by an eagle. Tomas flipped onto his back and kicked toward shore. I would jab him in the heart, he thought, and bring him up on my spear. I can do it. I will carry the shark above my head through the streets of Laredo. The mission bells will ring. The padre will say, 'Good has won over evil.' The fishermen of Laredo will sing, 'Tomas is brave, Tomas is strong, he killed the net ripper.' The fishermen will dance and sing and feast for 10 days and 10 nights. Sucking in a mouthful of water, he squirted it high into the air, then rolled to his stomach and stabbed an imaginary shark. 'I can get him,' his thoughts went on, 'because the monster isn't a killer shark, he's a whale shark.' Uncle Miguel saw him come up out of the deep water where whale sharks live. He saw him swim toward Coronados Island. Whale sharks are slow and dumb. They can't even catch a sea slug. I'll spear him easily." A round eye as black as the center of the earth peered through the clear water at him. It hung near the indigo edge of the rock reef and was separated from the other eye by 3 feet of cartilage, muscle, and skin. Tomas's scent traveled to the smelling lobe of the brain through nostrils located under the eyes. The scent of hundreds of terrified fish also traveled to that brain. The sound of Tomas's kicking was received through the skin and the nerves on either side of the long dark body. The round black eye enlarged and quivered with excitement. Tomas did not know he was targeted. He was lying on his back kicking with his feet, sculling with his hands and daydreaming. In his dream, he was carrying the shark into the plaza in front of the old mission in his hometown of Laredo, once the capital of Baja California. Tomas's small, compact body moved gracefully in his dream suit of spun gold. He wore a helmet decorated with the long gold feathers of the quetzal bird, It was a helmet like Quetzalcoatl's, Tomas's hero and a god hero of the ancient Aztec and Toltec Indians of Mexico. Quetzalcoatl, he called in his dream, help me lift the shark. Although Tomas Torres went to the Catholic Church, the gods of his Indian past were still very real to him and his family. He was, like most Mexicans, a mestizo, part Spanish and part Indian. And although Spanish was his native language and Spain his motherland, Tomas's memory, like that of his fellow mestizos, did not begin with the arrival of the Spanish in Mexico. It went back to the glorious Mexican past, when gods of good and evil reigned and warriors were eagles, jaguars, and feathered serpents, to a time when Mexico was young and ambitious. Tomas kicked toward the white beach, racing away from the dark water where the eye watched him. He was playing a game with his past, racing from dark to light, from evil to good. The beach was good. It was bright and white like Quetzalcoatl. The dark waters behind him were like Tezcatlipoca, the evil man who drove Quetzalcoatl from the ancient Toltec Indian capital to wander and die. Tomas's spine tingled. He loved the sensation of racing from evil to good, and as he shivered with excitement, the round eye lined him up with its companion eye, and Tomas was in focus. He put his feet down on the white sea bottom and was safe. Tilting back his head, he stared at the planet Venus, now low in the sky. It was as big as the moon and as white as a diamond. This, the morning star, his grandfather had told him, was the heart of Quetzalcoatl. When this Toltec leader, who had discovered corn and invented science, agriculture, and the calendar, died in exile, he was consumed by divine fire. His ashes became the birds, and his heart the sparkling Venus. Tomas kept his eye on the morning star. I'll find the great shark Quetzalcoatl, he vowed. Then you'll come down and help me vanquish him. You are going to return, you said so, and I'll recognize you. I won't make the same mistake Montezuma did. He thought Hernan Cortez was you, and his warriors your hosts. He gave you gold to appease you, hoping to send you back to the birds. But Cortez and his men hungered for gold and more gold. War broke out, and the great leaders died. The beautiful temples crumbled away. I shall not make the same mistake, Quetzalcoatl, he decided. You are a feathered serpent. Grandpapa has seen you coming down the mountain to drink in the sea. The round eye did not focus on the body that was kicking and sculling at the edge of the beach. The body's scent, sound, and shape were too exciting as they traveled from the eye, the nostrils and the skin to the brain. There they triggered the feeding frenzy. The shark writhed. Tomas went on dreaming. Lady of Guadalupe, he called, I need you too. I need all the help I can get to kill this shark. It did not seem strange to Tomas that he was calling on two histories, the history of the Mexicans before the Spanish conquest and the history after. The Lady of Guadalupe was also an important part of his life. She was modern and peculiarly Mexican. She had appeared only a few hundred years ago to a humble mestizo peasant on a dry, dusty road. The mother of Jesus asked the humble man to go to the bishop and request that a mission be built on the spot where she stood. After many years and as many requests, the peasant finally convinced the bishop he had seen a miracle. The mission was built, and the Lady of Guadalupe became the hope of millions of hardworking peasants, laborers, and fishermen, Mexico's poor. Tomas called on the Lady of Guadalupe to help with his quest just as freely as he had called upon Quetzalcoatl. They were very much alike, both very good. The water darkened behind him. Tomas kicked again, and his back touched sand. He sat up on the beach and heard, far out in the darkness, an armada of boats speeding northward toward the fishing grounds at the tip of Coronados Island. The gringos are coming, he said. The Mexican fishing guides were taking the sports fishermen, largely wealthy Americans, out to catch the big game fish of December, cabrilla, pompano, sierra, snapper, tuna, and yellowtail. In other months they went after silvery amberjacks, dark blue dolphins, marlins, and groupers. Loretto was a world-famous fishing ground, and sportsmen descended upon it all year round. Tomas and his family, who were commercial shark fishermen, considered the sports fishermen amusing visitors who brought dollars and jobs to Laredo, but who were no threat to their own fishing. Tomas splashed his face and ran his fingers through his thick black hair. Droplets ran off his straight nose and ruddy cheeks. His eyes were wide apart and very black. Water clung to his long, dark lashes. His morning bath done, he rocked on the small waves at the edge of the sea and summoned back his imaginary whale shark. The round, yellow spots that made this shark different from all other sharks shone like fiery jewels between the prominent ridges on its body. He saw the cavernous mouth that swept on tons of plankton as the monster rushed through the deep waters of the Sea of Cortez. He saw the mouth fall open in death. This, the biggest fish in the world, which often grew to be 45 feet, was not a killer shark. It had no teeth. The whale shark was valuable. Its skin was fashioned into leather goods more durable and beautiful than pigskin. The fins were brewed into the rare and exotic shark fin soup, and the delicious meat was sold to the gourmet restaurants in Mexico City. It was unusual to have a whale shark off the shores of Laredo, for its natural home was deep in the sea, and the very mystery of its presence inspired Tomas's imagination. He dreamed on. Now he was looking into his shark's lidless eye. It glowed like the sun rising out of the sea. A tear welled up. Tomas felt a sudden tenderness for the great fish. In his mind he threw the shark backward over his head and turned to watch it fall. As it struck the water and kerplashed and turned into a pelican, he stopped dreaming. The sun was up. Tomas ran up the beach of white coral sand and past the fish-cleaning table and jumped over the damaged net. It was stretched out on the sand to dry so it could be repaired. The Torreses had 2 big shark nets. The other was set in the sea between Coronados and Carmen Islands. Ramon and Miguel checked it twice a day. Tomas helped them when school was out, and as it was now for the 2-week Christmas festival. On most weekends and in the summer, he lived in the island Palapa, amusing himself by diving to watch the reef fish and helping Ramon and Miguel with the heavy nets. Seeing no possibility of catching the whale shark today, Tomas thought of another plan. Stepping into the Palapa, he took his shirt and trousers off a twig hook, drilled into a strut, dressed, and joined Ramon, who was preparing breakfast. "Grandpapa," he said, "can I climb the volcano today?" Ramon's eyes twinkled. This was a game the two often played. The answer was always no, followed by a vivid lecture that went like this. "The climb is perilous. Rocks fall, eagles circle, vultures come to pick your bones. The evil Tezcatlipoca roars at you." Tomas would cringe, act terrified, and stay home. Today his grandfather did not answer. The light of the rising sun illuminated his slender figure. Ramon Torres wore his trousers rolled to his knees. His bare feet were scarred and sunburned. He stood before the Palapa kitchen, a table-high box filled with sand. On one end a very small fire burned, lighting the pots and cups neatly stacked at the other end. "Can I climb the volcano?" Tomas repeated. Again Ramon did not answer, but the nostrils of his blunt, narrow nose flared slightly, as if he were about to speak. He smiled, and his white teeth contrasted sharply with his rich brown skin. Tomas was his joy. He had happily loved and spoiled him since Tomas's father had died when Tomas was 2 years old. Ramon had protected him, as he had all his children, within the palm-leaf fences of his Laredo home. It was a half-acre of grassless desert and palapas in the fishermen's colony of Laredo. Tomas had 2 loves, school and fishing, and he liked them equally. They were sometimes at war with each other, for one demanded sitting still in wonder, and the other demanded action, albeit in wonder too. Some day, he knew, he would have to decide between them, but until then he could enjoy them both. Life as Tomas was living it was wonderful. His mother and grandmother fussed over him, washing his clothes, feeding and praising him, and his grandfather saw to it that he never knew hunger. Ramon's half-acre of desert was well stocked with the date palms, lemon, avocado, pomegranate, and olive trees, and the trees the Jesuit monks had introduced to Baja from Spain in the 1500s. Furthermore, Ramon was the most successful of the famous shark fishermen of Laredo. There had always been fish for his large family of 13, 11 of whom were now married and living in La Paz, the new capital of Baja. His two youngest sons, Miguel and Ramon Jr., Tomas's father, had stayed home to help Ramon. Shark fishing was strenuous work. It required 2, and preferably 3, strong men to pull the huge nets and drag in the heavy sharks. Furthermore, shark fishing was dangerous. Not only could violent storms strike the Sea of Cortez suddenly and disastrously, but the big man-eaters like the hammerheads and tiger sharks fought the men who were pulling them into the boats. At these times, Ramon would warn Tomas to keep his distance. Sharks die from the tail up, he would say, and their jaws are the last to go. Ramon kneaded a piece of cornmeal dough in the palm of his hand. He was remembering, as he often did, the huge hammerhead shark that in the frenzy of dying had slammed its vicious jaws on Ramon Jr.'s arm and chest. Before Ramon could cut away the net and get Tomas's father back to Laredo, Ramon Jr. had died from loss of blood. Ramon lifted his eyes and looked across the water to the peninsula where Ramon Jr. lay long dreaming under the blue tile tomb in the graveyard. He believed his favorite son was sitting somewhere beyond the gauzy veil of death, waiting for him to come home from the island and bring him wine and fish. Like most mestizos, Ramon's understanding of life and death was more Aztec than Christian. To him, neither birth nor death interrupted the flow of life. Babies were born, men and women died, and more babies were born. In each stage of the cycle there was life. Ramon Jr. required food and drink and fresh clothes from time to time. On holidays and on the Day of the Dead in November, Ramon and his wife Dolores and Tomas and his mother, Francisca, would picnic in the graveyard with Ramon Jr. and leave him food, wine, and bright plastic flowers. Ramon flattened the ball of dough between his palms and placed it on a round iron grill that stood on short legs above the fire. "Yes, Tomas," he said suddenly, "you can." Tomas startled. The answer had been so long in coming that he had forgotten what he had asked. When he did recall, he was dumbfounded. "Really? I can climb the volcano?" "Come and eat." Ramon flipped over the corn tortilla with his fingers, filled it with spiced fish, and gave it to Tomas. He ate. Tomas always obeyed his grandfather if he heard him. Often he did not, especially when he was on some imaginary adventure, stabbing whale sharks or sailing the ship that Miguel had told him was wrecked on the top of Coronado's volcano. Savoring his fish tortilla, Tomas walked down the beach to join Miguel, who was scrubbing the inside of the big blue and white ponga. "Tell me about the ship on the top of the volcano," he said. "Yes, yes," began Miguel. "Many years ago, a fair-skinned Spaniard set sail from the Yucatan on the east coast of Mexico in a ship laden with gold." He stopped talking. "Then what? You know the rest. Tell me again." He miraculously sailed over the land into the mysterious waters of the Sea of Cortez. There he and his ship disappeared. Miguel looked up at the graceful volcano that was the island. From out at sea it resembled a rosy cone with sloping shoulders floating on the green-blue water. Coronados was an unusual island and very beautiful. "If you look closely, you can see the mast of the Spaniard's ship," Miguel said. Tomas squinted. A golden shaft appeared in the sky. Sails billowed out. Orders were shouted. The ship floundered and vanished. Tomas turned to his uncle. "Tell me more." "There is no more," Miguel said, bailing water now. "And stop asking. You always ask too many questions when you've been out here without playmates too long. Go find yourself a little lizard to talk to." The three fishermen were alone on the island. Although tourists sometimes picnicked on the picturesque white beach, and an occasional commercial fisherman left his nets there for the day, only the Torreses had a home on the island. Ramon had been fishing out of the Palapa since he was 12 years old and newly arrived from the mainland. He had left the state of Sonora for Baja, where the fish were as abundant as sand grains. With his own hands he had also built a home in Laredo. Although he had never paid for it, the land was his. In Mexico, a man owned the land he settled and lived upon. As the sun appeared over the rim of the sea, The willets, terns, and herons arrived on the beach in that order, each on its own light cue. Every bird species awakened at a different light threshold. In near darkness the pelicans got up. When the sun was higher, the willets and grebes appeared. Then the terns, gulls, and herons flew in. The last to fall out of the vanishing darkness were the sanderlings. "Pow!" Tomas said to three tiny, long-legged birds that dropped from the sky and ran along the edge of the water like flickering sunlight. "Pow! Hey, Miguel, look, magic! I say pow, and birds fall out of the sky. Pow, pow!" Two more white and tan sanderlings dropped to the water's edge. They appeared so suddenly that it did seem like magic. Miguel laughed, a sturdy, well-built young man with a fine black mustache and gentle eyes. He too loved Tomas. When his infant daughter and 2-year-old son had died several years ago, he had adopted Tomas in his heart and thought of him as his own. He and his wife prayed for more children, but their prayers had not been answered, and so Miguel gave the great love for his own lost children to Tomas. Like most Mexican parents of young children, he had encouraged Tomas to dream and enjoy himself. All too soon he knew playtime would be over and childhood gone. For Tomas the time was not far off. He would graduate from 9th grade at the end of this year. After that, by Mexican law, he was free to leave school and go to work, or stay on and go to high school. To fish or to study? Tomas would ask himself every now and then shake his head. The decision was too painful. "Be a fisherman," Miguel advised him one day. You will never be unhappy or starve if you fish." "But I love school too," he would answer. Tomas had a young science teacher, Juan Fuertes, who took him into the desert and along the coast, showing him how the animals of Baja lived in the fiery, waterless desert. Tomas learned quickly and wished he knew more. But he also liked to fish, to sail out in the pale blue panga with the wind in his hair and sea spray on his face. On the water he was as free as Aguila, the eagle, and Ballena, the great whale that dived and sounded in the Sea of Cortez. One day he asked Ramon to help him decide what to do. "Time and maturity will decide for you," he had said as he threaded a shuttle to mend a net. And Tomas suspected they would. But what and when? He was impatient for an answer. The sandpipers ran back and forth hunting tiny crabs. Miguel stored 2 bottles of fresh water in the panga, then challenged Tomas to a race to the palapa. They slid up to the table together. "Miguel," Tomas said as he brushed off his pants, "I'm not going with you today. Today I climbed the volcano." "No," Miguel answered empathetically. "It's too dangerous. Besides, Ramon says the oficiales are looking for fishermen. They may come here. Someone must meet them and find out what they want." "The oficiales?" Tomas said apprehensively. "What could they want of us?" "I do not know," said Miguel, frowning, "but oficiales always means trouble. What do I do if they come?" "Go climb the volcano," grunted Ramon, who had joined them. "What will they do to us?" Tomas asked his grandfather. "Nothing," he answered. "Oficiales do one thing one day and something else the next. Once they built a fine government restaurant in Laredo for no reason. A month later it was closed for no reason. Next the oficiales built a costly solar-powered seawater distillery. It irrigated the land for a month, and then it closed. Oficiales do not know what they want," he concluded. Tomas looked at him quizzically. "Is this politics you're talking, Grandpapa?" he asked. "Yes, it is politics," Ramon replied. "You have never talked to me like this before. You are now 14, old enough to join the men's talk." Tomas heard and was pleased. He threw out his chest and ran to the panga. "Get in, Grandpapa. Get in, Miguel," he said. "I'll push you off." The fisherman climbed aboard and Tomas pressed his hands against the panga. The muscles in his arms rose like the volcano as he shoved the boat into the water. He observed them with pleasure. He would soon be strong like Miguel. Perhaps he should be a fisherman. "Politics," he said to himself as he stepped back. "Now that I am old enough to talk politics, how do I begin?"